Welcome to 30 Minutes with Workroom Tech. I'm Ceil Guglielmo, and along with Susan Woodcock, we'll be bringing you this workroom education podcast each month. We'll have links to Susan's blog posts, as well as accompanying videos to help you with your custom window treatment and soft furnishings education. 30 Minutes with Workroom Tech is sponsored by Workroom Tech, and you can learn all about their hands-on classes in Tryon, North Carolina by visiting workroomtech.com. Hi, Susan. How are you today?
Hello, Ceil. I'm doing well. And boy, has a lot changed since our last episode, episode 111 of the
It has.
podcast. Yeah, the making the announcement of the sale of Workroom Tech was a big deal. But we're still here working, and we have a class in session today, and we're here to record a podcast about balloon shades.
I, when you sent me the title, I was like, I knew we'd end up talking about this soon because I am seeing more of them. And I have to laugh because I think the second window treatment I made for myself, when I didn't know I was making window treatments, I thought I was just fixing some things on my windows. I think I made a balloon shade.
Yeah, that was the very first thing I made as a professional
Oh,
when I went in business for myself in 1988, back in the 1900s. And
oh, that sounds terrible.
and it was black background chintz with pink flowers, and it had pink and white polka dot rough inset ruffles.
Oh my goodness.
And it probably had a welt cord too in another color.
Yes,
And
probably.
it was a bedroom, and I think there was dust ruffled pillow shams and a headboard all out of this black floral chintz, which was so popular then.
Yes,
And
it was.
I'm going to look back through my old photo albums because it was not a digital photo back then.
I have a few of those.
Right, it was probably a Polaroid picture. So I'm going to go back and see if I can find a picture, if I took pictures, and
That
if I
would
can
be
still find
fun. Yeah.
them.
Susan, I was going through trying to free up some memory in my phone, and I am not ready to get rid of any of the window treatments that I did, but I realized that yes, I did start making window treatments before I had a phone in my hand. I'm not sure how many pictures I have. I may not
Yeah.
have any at all.
I used to take pictures. It was funny. I would take pictures and cut them out. Have the photo that was printed, but I would cut out everything around, like cut and paste, but like literally with a pair of
You were
scissors.
scrapbooking.
So that's the last time balloon shades were popular in my world. But yeah, they're coming back. So are London shades and other styles of shades. And there was an article in Veranda magazine last year, and the title was, "These are the hottest window treatment trends for 2025, balloon shades included." And they said that the iconic 90s style is back and chicer than ever. I don't know, chicer or chicker, Chicer. I don't know.
I would say more chic than
More
ever.
chic. I know. More chic is not better. Their magazine. They should have editors that
Yeah,
would.
chicer does not feel like a word.
So anyway, so they're putting up the stamp of approval on balloon shades.
Okay.
And the for people that have not made balloon shades in a long time, or some of our newer workrooms that are like, well, what exactly is a balloon shade? There are also some cousins in the balloon shade family. So balloon shades are gathered or pleated across a
Mhm.
board mounted, and then they're pulled up with rings from the bottom like a Roman shade. So that fullness creates, I'm going to use the official term of poofs or balloons. So that gives you that fullness at the bottom, that round, full poofiness. So the cousins would be like an Austrian shade.
Right.
Austrian shade has fullness in the length and very minimal or no fullness across the width.
Across it. Right.
And then there's London shades, and they have like two pleats, one pleat on each end that's inset from the end to create a tail.
Right.
You have a larger poof or belly in the middle and tails on the ends. And they're all similar, but balloon
And
shapes are a little more fullness in those.
yes. And I'm thinking that the continental rod that I had mine gathered on is probably not available at this time to make a balloon shade. I'm going to bet that Kirsch does not make that anymore.
We're going to have to do a blast from the past podcast, Ceil, on
We
all the
are.
things. Your continental rod with your celery green antique satin balloon shade.
Yes, little pink moray. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, you can just pause because we are much older than you are.
We're not going back there. We're gonna bring the balloon shades into the 21st century today.
What, Susan, what do you think is creating this return to a little more detail and a little more volume? Because we've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of drapes and flat Roman shades.
Yeah, a lot of order. And the
Yes,
draperies have they tended to become kind of like Roman shades where they were dressed with these perfect folds.
yes.
And so you have the horizontal folds of the Roman shade and these perfect vertical folds of the drapery. And I think we're trending away from that now. So
Mhm.
everything that's old is new again,
Yes,
things go in cycles. And it also the trends are more pattern, more texture,
right,
and more softness. And
right.
so we're seeing it come back. And I also think that to update them, what I'm seeing is maybe a little less fullness. So if you're gathering it, you're not gathering it at 2.5 times fullness. You're using maybe 1.5 times fullness. And that creates a softer bottom
Mhm.
than a droopy poof.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not as exaggerated.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also seeing a more modern look is using sheer or light filtering. So,
Okay.
sheer or a light color. So it
Hmm.
might be a lined um, cotton or silk, but it's going to be peach color or
Okay.
yellow or, a pale green or ivory or white and not looking heavy and dark.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't seen that for a while.
Hmm.
I mean, we've seen grays and beiges and things like that, but we haven't seen a lot of patterned or colorized fabric.
Yeah. So, you can add balloon shades. They can be on their own, but you can also have them underneath of draperies and top treatments. And that is a very traditional style. Think of a Victorian home, right?
Right.
You have like velvet draperies and a cornice board or pelmet, and then you have this functioning sheer balloon shade or
Right.
light color balloon shade that's still lets some light in but gives you the privacy. And uh, I said functional, and people are now getting an eye twitch because workroom friends know that functional and balloon shade do not always go well together.
Correct.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute about functional versus stationary.
Okay.
So let's start off with how to make a balloon shade. So you will want them to be gathered or shirred um, with either like a gathering tape, smocking tape, or they can be pleated, and they could be box pleated, or you could pleat them like a drapery header. So you could have French pleats, goblet pleats, inverted pleats, Euro pleats, if you wanted to for a balloon shade.
You really could. I never thought about that before.
I've actually made them with pleats once in a while, not as often,
Okay.
but it can be really pretty. So for all of you that are big fans of pleats with knots on the bottom of the pleats, those
Hmm.
crazy time-consuming things. Well, you can
Yes.
add them to balloon shades too, so it'd be
Yeah.
very pretty. So that's across the width, and so you need to plan your fullness. The more fullness you have, the deeper that the poofs and balloons are going to be, and it can get really too droopy and for me, and I also think that makes it look dated and
I agree.
not quite up to today's not standards, but um
Aesthetic.
yeah, today's aesthetic.
Susan, I think that's always, and I see this question a lot, like two swoops, two droops, and that the depth of that drop, whether it's a soft fold Roman shade or a balloon shade, that that perspective has to be right, or it really does look off kilter. And I
Hmm.
think I've never been a fan of a big long droop. And a couple times I'd have a designer say, "Oh, and I want it to be so deep here." I'm like, "Do you? Do you really?" Like, what if I send you some pictures and then you decide?
Yeah, I like it to be more of like a C shape instead of a U shape.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Not quite exaggerated. And I have in my past commented on a balloon shade looking like a full diaper. Like there's just like this baggy saggy.
Yes, there's something about it that
Too
just puts you in
much.
mind of that. And that's not really what I want to think of when I'm looking at my window treatments.
You can't unsee it now, can
No,
you?
you cannot.
So just be mindful of that when you're planning your fullness. And I would not go over two times fullness on a balloon
Right.
shade. Unless it was a really big window and you were having your ring spacing really far apart and you could have these larger areas of
Mhm.
scooping down. But they're still going to be really, really droopy. So keep that in mind. Um, and then there's how many balloons across the bottom, how many, I'll call them scallops. They create a scallop shape.
Right.
And in my book, I had to come up with a formula because I published a book, and I have
Right.
something in there. So as a good starting point is to divide your width of the board width by 10. You don't want to go less than that.
Okay.
So if you had a 30-inch balloon shade, you could do three, 10, 10, 10, or you could do two at 15 and 15. But I wouldn't want to go greater than 10 inches apart.
Okay.
Um,
So my
Good starting
concern
points.
about the two sometimes is
Uh-huh.
that yeah,
Looks
it
like a
looks
bra,
droopy in a
a
different
baggy
ways.
bra. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yep, that's it. Again, can't unsee that.
Well, and it depends on the window too. I mean, if there's something structural that you want to have too, like a
Yes.
mullion in the middle or something, it
Yeah.
could work. But yeah, I kind of agree with you that an odd number is nicer.
It almost always is. And anytime I've had a window situation where we're trying to match things up and it's an even number, I always look for a way to make it odd if we can and still have it look good,
Hmm.
especially
Yeah.
if it's got swoops.
And I'm a huge fan of silk balloon shades. I
Yeah.
think, we're seeing silk come back. I haven't really seen a lot coming back through my workroom, but it's the way that it reflects the light
Yes.
and it just has that crunchy, scrunchy look to it that is
It,
gorgeous.
it lends itself so well to those gathered styles. I agree with you.
Yeah, so think about that when you're picking out fabrics. You don't want to pick out anything that's like upholstery weight.
Right.
Although a velvet could be really pretty in a balloon shade because that also reflects the light, but you'd want to get a thinner, softer velvet.
Yeah.
Um,
And
again, not
definitely not overly full because it would be
yeah,
too hard to work with and it
exactly.
would look too much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it would look really heavy. And when you're designing and planning on your balloon shades, just think about If you have a window with wall space above, a balloon shade or a London shade or even a Roman shade is a great way to fill in that wall
Yes.
above the window. Um, if you had something like inside mounted, your balloon shade's going to take up half your window, or you can't have a little short 12-inch balloon shade
Right.
unless it's a dollhouse. It's not going to work. It doesn't make a good little short balance. So think about, how much room do you have? Can you raise it up above the window? And that would be a great choice for a balloon shade. That would be wonderful if you had draperies and you had a lot of wall space above. You could make the whole window look taller and bigger and
Right.
yeah, be gorgeous. So inside mounting does have disadvantages. Um, and what else? I just want to get through all these little like preliminary notes. Um, okay, so let's just talk about stationary versus working balloon shades. You can have working balloon shades if you don't care that every time that goes up and down is going to look different.
Yeah. So, how do you set expectations for a designer
Mhm.
or a client for something
Exactly.
like that?
Yeah, yeah. You have to have a customer that wants that random, soft, what has that look that looks beautiful because it's imperfect. So the imperfection is the perfection with a balloon shade. I know that's hard for a lot of us perfectionists that want things to be the same every time. And then your fabric choice has a lot to do with it. Something like a lined polyester sheer would probably be pretty awesome for
Right.
a balloon shade that's functioning. Something like a linen would be not so wonderful.
Yeah.
Someone like me that doesn't mind, I kind of like fabric to look like fabric.
Yes.
But the wrinkled linen, especially when it was down, would just be sad.
Yeah, Susan, I love linen and I wear a lot of it. I have one window treatment in my home that is linen. As much as I love fabric to be fabric, it just doesn't always look as done
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
it too, and I think I really shy away from it for that reason. I don't mind if my pants look wrinkly after I've worn them for a while. I just not a favorite to look at my window treatments. Like I know so many of our colleagues have made beautiful linen Roman shades, and I just see the lines where they're folded, and
Yeah. Yep.
I can't unsee that.
Yeah, and so you can with balloon shades if um, you are having them function, you can plan to have extra at the bottom that's fixed. So there's
Mhm.
always that scalloped, poofy look at the bottom,
Yes,
or not. I mean, you could have it where when it hangs down, it just looks like a gathered curtain hanging at the window.
right,
If it's a fabric that doesn't hold a crease, and when it falls out and falls down, you can have a weight bar in there to help with that, then that would look fine.
right,
So it just depends on the customer's expectations and the fabric choices.
right.
Um, if you're making a stationary balloon shade, you do want to plan to have extra added to the length to create those poofs at the bottom.
Right.
So let's say you decide where you want the bottom of the balloon shade to be, and then you would add at least three extra folds. So if you were doing 6-inch vertical spacing, you need to add at least 18 inches.
Right.
I would probably add more. You can always take them away. You cannot bring them back. So once you cut them off.
Susan, I think that the struggle will be for some of the people who have never made these types of window treatments before with this much fabric is the proportion.
Yeah.
And anytime I've done a stationary Roman shade or anything like that, you always want there to be enough fabric to look as if it's
Hmm.
enough fabric. But that changes with a gathered fabric and the fullness and everything else. And we're talking about a blast from the past, and I can think of a few window treatments I wouldn't want to share because it wasn't my choice for the proportion.
Yeah.
It was someone else's, and I felt like it was overpowering and it was just too much. And I think that's something it'll be fun to experiment with and see, especially with some different fabrics.
Yeah.
And as you said, to have the three extra folds at the bottom to make it look luscious and full and as if you could lower it. But more than that, with a gathered fabric, I think is going to start to feel like it's just too much.
Yeah, and in my career, I've made a ton of balloon shades back then, and they were mostly always stationary, and I would railroad the lining.
Oh,
So
okay.
my typical length on a balloon shade was, 54 inches or
Perfect.
15 inches or whatever. And then just put all the rings and stuff on it, pull it up to where they wanted it to be, and that's what I
Right,
was trying to go with.
right,
And that formula seemed to work out really well.
right. And for most windows, I would think it would. And as you said, especially if you can mount slightly above a window, you can get that effect and still see a lot of the window underneath it.
Yeah. If you're doing a pleated balloon shade, like box pleated, just like when you're making a box pleat valance or a box pleat dust ruffle, or box pleat drapery, you have to plan your seam placement,
Yes.
and you have to plan pattern placement. So if you have 3 sections or 5 sections, each section you want to have either pattern matched or so that each one has the same flower, or
Right.
maybe every other one is different. You can play around with your pattern motifs. And there might be times when you have a scene, a toile, or something that has a big overall scene where you're pattern matching so that it looks like it all flows across, So let's say it's a
Right.
hunt scene, right? The horses are running across, so you don't have the same horse on the front of each one. You try to
Right.
recreate the pattern, and that doesn't happen by accident. All of
No, and
them,
it's time consuming to do that.
yes. So I would highly recommend a paper pattern or a pattern out of scraps of lining or something, and figure out where you want your seams to be hidden inside,
Right.
and your size of your pleats, which I probably would put 10 inches in a pleat.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It can be
Depending.
lesser. For the lesser fullness, it will not be as droopy.
Right.
So I probably would not go over 10 inches in a pleat unless they really wanted it exaggerated.
Yeah. I can't think of that I've ever done it larger than that. And it has been a while since I've made a London shade. Um, and now that we're talking about this, I think the London shades that I've made had a lot of contrast fabric inserts.
Hmm.
So that requires some planning as well.
Yeah, so the also with balloon shades, if you have multiple pleats, you want to make sure that your spaces are large enough to accommodate the pleats, right? So
Right.
if you have a small window, and on the ends, you can do a half a pleat, or you could do a full pleat on the ends. If you had a small return, I would do a half a pleat.
Okay.
Big enough return, if you had 10 inches in the pleat, then your fold is going to be 2.5,
Right.
just each side folded in half. So you would need at least a 2.5 inch board, if you wanted to do um, that size pleat. And that's getting kind of tight and crowded there. So you could do a half
Right.
pleat on the ends. But again, that's sort of up to you. And but that pre-planning takes a lot of time. So as far as time studies and pricing goes, um, try to think of something that you already make that would take a similar amount of time. Let's
And add more.
like a box pleated dust ruffle, it's the
Yeah.
same work as a box pleated balloon shade out of a print fabric. Now, if you're using something you can railroad, or solid fabrics where you can just figure out your spaces and your pleats, and you might have one seam
Right.
somewhere hidden in there, and that would be okay too. As far as the sewing the rings, you do need to use a cord shroud or safety shade ring locks to meet cord safety standards, even if it's a stationary shade. And then for lift systems, it can be anything.
right, it could be anything that you're used to using and like using, you could use for a balloon shade.
Yeah. So, motorized, you could have almost like opera shades, um, uh, motorized for a theater room,
Hmm.
um, under side panels. It would be gorgeous. And um, any type of headrail with a clutch would work. Roller tubes would work. Um, the Centurion widget or a roller spring,
Okay.
or coulisse. All of those things would work.
Right. Yeah, it's not really all that different from a Roman shade,
Right.
except it's got more widthfulness.
Yeah, and it is going to, so if you're looking at a system that has weight limits, or
Good point.
yeah, you might want to check with the supplier because you're going to have a lot more fabric than you would with a Roman shade.
Okay.
And some of them are sort of basing their weight limits and things on flat Romans.
Hmm.
Um, so let's say you're using a spring, you might need to go up to a bigger spring than
Okay.
than what you would need if you were doing a Roman shade.
Yeah.
And you can just, fold up all your fabrics and your weight bar and weigh them.
Yeah. Then you'll know for sure.
The board, you don't have to weigh the board or the lift system, but the weight bar and but you can find out your average per inch or per foot weight on your weight bars anyway and have that information. But if it's something light like a sheer or something, you'll probably be just fine.
Right.
And then you'll sew your rings on, and or you could sew shroud tape directly to the shade.
Hmm.
On a gathered shade, you're just going to sew it onto the back while it's flat before you gather it up. And then on the box pleated shade, I like to actually pleat it first, find the center of that pleat on the back.
Okay.
You're sewing your rings on, not catching the other parts of the shade underneath. The only
Right.
you have to catch the face fabric on the pleat part.
But nothing more.
Or um, and if you have trim at the bottom or ruffles, you might want to start your bottom ring up a certain amount of inches so that you can see that feature on the bottom because the bottom does sort of tuck under
A
and get
little bit it does, yeah.
so it depends on the trim you're using.
Boy, there's so many things about making balloon shades that I had forgotten, Susan.
I know, it's a lot. And for attaching to the board, if you're doing a waterfall um, gathered, you can gather it up with a shearing tape or something and staple it to the board.
Mhm.
But the way I do it is to divide the shade into sections, mark that same amount of sections on the board,
Right,
put those staples in, and then scrunch it up in between and gather it up and staple it as I go. And that will be on the top of the board and it falls over the top.
right.
Looks really pretty.
So this is something that because of the styles that we've been doing, we haven't really had to talk about a whole lot, and that is cutting away the bulk.
Mhm.
I mean, if you've done box pleat valances or things like that, you've had to deal with it, but that creates a lot of fabric on the top.
Yeah, if you're doing a box pleated balloon shade, yeah. Yeah, so you could go in and put some key staples in and then cut away the bulk. You also can go inside the pleats and staple into the front edge of the board
Yes,
and then cut away a lot of the bulk from above that.
right.
So hide those staples underneath the inside and underneath those pleats.
Yeah, that's a great place to do it. It is scary to trim away that fabric, but it looks so much nicer when there isn't all that bulk.
And if since we're going completely, totally 90s here, or 2000s, the doing something like a Maltese cross,
Mm-hmm.
a box pleated balloon shade, or a gathered balloon shade. But if you're doing a box pleated balloon shade, making or gathered, making a small cornice box that's underneath can be like 4 inches
Right.
that you can staple from the front of the shade and and staple your Maltese cross in place.
Right.
Staple up underneath of the pleats. And so what's on top is really it's just folded over on top. You can cut away a lot of bulk that way.
Right.
That looks good.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite old-fashioned ways to do gather balloon shades is with shearing tape and planning for a header above the tape. So the
Hmm.
header sits above the board,
Yes.
and you put hook strip on the board. And there are shearing tapes that have loop strip
Yes, I have some of that.
incorporated into
Yeah.
them. And you could use that and put that onto the face of the board. I would still add a staple or
I
two.
would, I know, I'm thinking like I would, there's no way I would not staple that on.
It's to me, it's just not as secure as loop strip, the
Yeah.
strip, not, the real loop strip and not the what's on the back of that shearing tape. So
Right.
you can hide staples inside of those gathers. And you
Absolutely.
not across the whole shade, but
Right.
the beginning and end at least,
Yeah.
maybe.
Just something to make sure that it wouldn't be pulled off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're doing a wider shearing tape like a smocking tape, again, do that cornice box and put
Right.
extra hook strip underneath.
Right.
So it's attaching in more than one place.
Right.
But I like to machine sew the loop strip on. So I will show this. I'll put up a picture or a video on the blog so people can see.
Right.
But when you sew on your shearing tape, you gather up your shade, you measure your loop strip to fit the board,
Hmm.
and then you fit that onto the back of the shade,
Okay.
and you machine sew on the top and bottom, and it creates this like almost like a little channel of stitching.
Right.
It is top stitching. You have to use a matching thread, but it makes the really pretty header, and you have that, like a ruffle above.
Right.
And I just always really liked that. And
Do you, I mean, of course I would
recently,
use matching thread, but do you really see those stitches very much, Susan,
well,
in the gathering?
it creates a horizontal stitch line that is setting that shearing tape,
Okay.
right? So the shearing tape isn't, especially if you're using something like a pencil pleat tape, it's going to mash it
Right.
down in a fixed way, which I like.
Okay.
Because on
Hmm.
some of those shearing tapes, they can kind of get sort of slanted or, um, you know, shift a little left or right.
Oh,
Or,
right, right,
I'm
right.
using my
That's
hands, and I know people can't see, but they tilt. They're like when you're gathering it up, it might be sort of tilted
okay.
or whatever, or if you take it on and off the board, or so I think by machine sewing it, it like sets it. And it just takes me back to a ton of valances I did that way. Gathered, scalloped valances with shearing tape and a header, board mounted with Velcro. I've just made miles and miles and miles of those. Bed canopies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty. And then the last thing to think about with balloon shades is your weight bar. And you'll want to use a round bar and a sleeve.
Okay.
And that goes, I like to put it behind the cords. So you hang your shade, put it behind the cords,
Hmm.
mark your weight bar for all the sections that you have. So let's say you had 10-inch sections, mark it 10 inches, and then stitch it to the bottom ring,
Right.
bottom of the shade, behind the ring. And that way, when the shade lifts up, it keeps all the sections perfect from the bottom to the top aligned. If you're doing a stationary shade, you might not need a weight bar because of the fullness of the shade. It's not
Right.
like an Austrian shade that doesn't have any horizontal fullness.
Right.
It's not like a Roman shade that's completely flat and needs that something in the bottom to keep it from looking like a pillowcase hanging at the
Right.
window. So, but with a stationary balloon shade, check it first. You might not need a weight
Right.
bar, and that's one less thing to add, one less thing that could get caught up if somebody was cleaning or doing something at the window that they shouldn't be, or a kid hanging on it or something.
Something we have no control over.
Especially a gathered one or even a pleated one. Try it first.
Yeah.
If it's stationary, you might not need to put a weight bar in.
Okay. Susan, how wide do you usually do a weight bar for something like that? Do you do it the same width as your board? Do you do it a little less than the board?
Uh, Not bigger than the board, but you want it to go from the outside ring to the outside ring on each side.
Okay.
So that sort of depends on where that falls, and it's usually about at the end of the board.
Right.
So yeah, so that would be a good starting point, is to say the board width.
Okay.
And then you can always, move the rings in a little bit, but I
Right.
wouldn't want it greater than the board. That would be.
Right. That's what I thought. I just
Mhm.
thinking it's a different type of shade. Could there possibly be a difference? Okay.
And you can purchase a sleeve to go over weight bars, or you can make your own. And if you use 3/8 inch threaded rod, which I like to use because it's a little less expensive and more easily available, cover it with tape.
Hmm.
Wrap it with tape before you try to slide it in that sleeve, because it will not go in that sleeve
No, it
without
will not.
cover it up.
If you need proof, just give me a call.
The headache.
I did try it once.
And it looks nice too because it's dark. And if you
Right.
use a white tape, a white masking tape, or white duct tape or something like that, cover your rods, and that works fine. So hang it up and see how it looks before you make a commitment to the weight bar. But if it's a functional shade, you do need a
Yeah,
weight bar.
definitely.
And I think that's a very good review of balloon shades. I can't believe after 112 episodes, we're finally getting to balloon shades.
Well, we didn't really have a need to up until now, but I have seen a few. And Susan, you do go over that in your book, right? You do have instructions for it? Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, it's a stationary balloon shade that's gathered on a board, waterfall off the
Mhm.
board. And I still have it. It's pretty. Maybe I'll hang it up.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that I've admitted freely, I'm not really good at experimenting and trying things until I have to make something for someone.
Right.
And I'll do a mock-up, but I don't necessarily try something that I'm then going to hang up or have as a sample in my workroom. But I do think that for those of us who have been making flat Roman shades and pinch pleat draperies for a while, it might be really fun to try something like this and see if we like doing it, see how it feels. I think a lot of the fabrication methods for this are similar to what we've been doing. There's just more fabric, and then we have to keep in mind where that's going to go. And we
I,
haven't had to think about those things.
yeah. If you have a roll of silk fabric under your work table that's left over from some project years ago, and maybe you're training a new employee, give them a balloon shade to make.
There you go.
I mean, and put it in your showroom, um, or use it for photos on social media, or hang it on a window in your house, because it's really hard to screw them up.
You know what?
Not a Roman shade. You don't have to have exact, right?
Right.
That'd be a great thing for somebody to learn on.
And have a great sense of accomplishment when they finished it.
Yeah. So for the bottom hem, you don't have to, I just sew like a dust ruffle for the bottom hem. So like 1 inch hem, 1 inch seam, turn and press so that it wraps around the bottom,
Right.
then put in your side hems. And you can blind stitch them, hand sew them,
What?
use
Yeah.
adhesive, whatever you want to do for the side hems, and then plan your ring spacing. So that'd be a great way to get somebody sort of familiar with making shades,
Right.
and you'd have a pretty thing to put in that looks like something that nobody's ever seen before. If they're
Isn't that funny? But how many of us have had either a sample in our workroom, those of us who have maybe more room and we have samples hanging, somebody comes in and sees something and says, "Oh, I love that." And
yeah.
if they haven't seen a balloon shade in a while, then maybe it's time for them to see it.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me because we have a London shade here, we have an Austrian shade on display. And I don't have a balloon shade. I did have one up for a little while. And people will come in and go, "Oh, that Austrian shade, I hate that. Oh, I love the London shade." Or
Yeah.
some people come in and go, "The Austrian shade, I've never seen that before." That's really cool. I had friends here that were visiting that aren't in our industry, and they hadn't been to Workroom Tech before, and they were like, "What is that? I've never seen that. That is so pretty." It was an Austrian shade.
So I did a couple of Austrian shades a couple years back. It was a very unique um, client. She had very um, glitzy taste.
Yeah.
And the designer did a great job. They are not things I ever would have put together. And yet it turned out beautiful. And it was the client. Most importantly, it suited her beautifully. But I had to do the Austrian shades out of a shimmery um, sheer. And the whole time I was working on it, it was just I didn't care for it. It was not difficult. I really had no trouble at all making them. It seemed almost too easy. I felt like it should have been harder to make than it was because I was expecting it to be. And it went up in her home and it looked stunning. And
Yeah.
again, it wouldn't be my living room, but that's not who I was working for. I was working for someone else, but I just kept thinking like the shimmer in the sheer just picked up the light and
Yeah.
it was gorgeous.
Wow.
And I was really happy that I got to do something so different from my own taste.
Yeah. 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 I do that all the time.
Yeah, yes, we do. Well, Susan, I can't wait to hear if anyone is making balloon shades. And when you post this episode of the podcast, I would love to see if people have any to share.
Yeah, and I hope people will go to the blog. So I'll put some pictures and some maybe a video or something up there so people can kind of see what we're talking about.
That sounds great. I can't wait to see them.
This was fun.
Yes, it was. I like talking about something we haven't done in a while.
You too. Thanks, Ceil.
Thanks, Susan. After talking with Susan about the balloon shades, I really hope I get the opportunity to make one again soon. It's been a number of years since I've had that chance. And in talking through the details of it, I feel like I could conquer it, even though I've forgotten most of the ones I've already made. I think this would not be too difficult. We would love to hear if you're making any balloon shades, and you can share them on Susan's post after this podcast is released. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great day.